We just got back from our hike out in the woods, and we were at a place where there was so much lichen. So we gathered some, and I was going to test some of it to see what color it will make. So all of this was gathered from the floor, from the ground. I did not take any off of trees. These were all things that I found on the ground. It can take lichen hundreds of years to grow. They're very slow growers, so it's best not to take it off of trees. After a good wind or rain, you'll always find some on the ground. So I think we have 4 different kinds here. I don't know my lichen very well. I know that this is Usnea, because this is one that I've used before as medicine. And I know that it makes kind of a pale yellow. It's not the prettiest color. I probably wouldn't gather it just so that I could dye with it, because I can get yellows elsewhere. Let's see. The rest of them, I don't know what they are. I've never seen one like this. I just think this is super cool looking. It's kind of like seaweed, but it was on the ground. I only saw one big patch of it. Let's see. Just trying to put them into piles. Okay, so we've got this one here that's kind of flatter, and it was on a piece of bark that had fallen off. We've got these over here that have larger leaves to them. That's a good example. And then this one that looked like the seaweed that I don't know what that is. And then this stuff over here that looks like, I don't know, I keep wanting to call it staghorn or something. It just looks like some kind of antler. And then the Usnea that I showed you. So I've got the 4 lichens that I don't know what they are. I know that the Usnea dye is kind of a yellowish tan color, so I'm not going to test that one. I don't know what these are, so I'm going to do what's called the C test on them, which basically means C for calcium hypochlorite, which is basically household bleach. I'm going to take my fingernail and scratch away the top layer on each one of these, and then I'm going to use this Q-tip that I've dipped in a tiny bit of bleach and rub it on that spot where I've scratched it. If it doesn't do anything, then it's considered C negative. If it changes color or flashes a red or purple or orange, then it's C positive, and that means that it will dye in an ammonia extraction method. Traditionally, people used urine, but I'm going to use store-bought ammonia, so it doesn't smell so bad. But basically, that's going to extract a chemical out of it that will probably give me either a fuchsia pink, bright red, purple, one of those colors. Traditionally, most lichens, you use a boiling water bath method, and they'll go yellow, maybe orange, maybe brown. Some spectacular yellows and oranges, but often it's nothing to write home about. But if you use the ammonia method on some of these, you can get some really vibrant colors. Sometimes reds, blues, greens, purples. So we're going to see what we've got. So I'm going to put the camera down for a second so I can use 2 hands to use my fingernail and scratch a little spot on these, and then I will be right back. All right, here's the first one. I scratched a little spot right here. Let's see what we get. Nothing. No change. It's still just white. Well, okay, so this will probably do fine in a boiling water bath, and I'll give it a try. See what it does. This next one was really hard. Every time I tried to scratch, it would just rip in half, but I was able to get a little bit right over here. I can't tell that I see a lot of change. Still looks about the same to me. Okay, so again, that might do well in a boiling water bath, and I can see what color I get out of that. All right, this next one is the one that looked like seaweed. No, it's not doing much. That just stays white too. Okay, last one. This is the one that looks like antlers. Ooh, look at that. That is so cool. So look at that. That one turned bright red. You see it? That's where I scratched it. So this one, whatever this one is that looks like antlers, I'm going to have to figure that out. I'm going to do an ammonia extraction. So I'm not an expert in this. I've never done the ammonia extraction before. I've only read about it. But I do know that once I put it in basically half water, half ammonia, I'm going to let it sit for a long time. I'm going to aerate it a bunch because that the oxygen helps transform the chemical that you want for the dye. And then I'm probably going to be shaking it every day for the next few months until I, probably about 4 or 5 months before I get the dye bath that I'll be using. So there we go. If you have any idea what this lichen, is, let me know, and I will do some research myself. Cool. Hey again. Okay, so I think I have identified this lichen as a Pseudovernia species, but I'm not positive. Either way, that species is one that can make pinks, reds, purples when it's dyed in an ammonia dye bath. So, I'm going to chop it up and get it into some ammonia. So here it all is. I've chopped it up, and the reason why I did that was because I wanted to increase the surface area that can come in contact with the ammonia as a way to try and pull out as much color as possible. All right, so earlier I told you that I was going to use store-bought ammonia to put this lichen in. But I've reconsidered that. This is my first time trying this, and I would really like to use what I have on hand. And one thing I have on hand is my own urine. So those of you who are squeamish about bodily fluids may want to look away. Here I have a nice big bottle of my own pee. Yes, I collected it. I was a nurse for a while, so I have no issue with bodily fluids, but it's really not that hard to do. It's easier to collect if you're a man, however, ladies, it is not that hard if you just aim well. Here's why I collected my own urine. When urine goes stale, after about 24 hours, it begins to develop ammonia on its own, so there's no reason to go out and buy it. And for those of you who are like, oh, that's disgusting, I would not want yarn that had been dyed with pee, remember that most of us eat food that is grown in cow, horse, rabbit dung. It has been composted, just like this will be fermented by the time it's done. So, and if you think about it, in the past, most of the natural dyes used some sort of, not most, but many natural dyes used some sort of mordant or dye preparation that required urine, dung, even some that required blood. So, I'm just doing what my ancestors did. Either way, I've gathered this, it's sat for 24 hours and has started to develop its own ammonia. That will continue for a little while as this processes. My other question that I needed to know the answer to was, do I need to dilute it? Because if I'm using ammonia, I will dilute the ammonia by half, at least in water. Ammonia has a pH of almost 12, so I would want to bring that pH down to around 8 or 9, which is why you dilute it with water. Urine by itself, when it's stale, goes up to about a pH of 9. So that's perfect, and I don't need to dilute it. So I'm going to take all my lichen, and I'm going to put it in the urine, and I'm going to shake it a bunch for at least the first couple of weeks. I'm going to shake it 3 or 4 times a day because the oxygenation helps with the process of pulling the dye compounds from the lichen. After that, you can just shake it daily. And you're going to let it sit for 3 to 4 months because it's a long process. The longer you let it sit, the better color development you have. So it'll be a while to watch this grow. But I'm going to get the lichen in there and we'll get it started. Okay, so the lichen is in the ammonia fluid. I've shaken it up really well, and the recipes that I've read say that it needs to cover your lichen, but as you can see, it's floating right now, so I feel like there is enough in there, and there's lots of airspace in there so that I can shake it up well and keep getting that oxygen into the lichen. And I will keep you updated with how this progresses. Hey everyone, it is 1 week since we started our brew, so I just wanted to give you an update to see how it looks. I'm holding it up as much as I can to the sun. The sun's not over our little mountain yet, so you can't see through it. It looks fairly dark brown. I'm giving it a shake every couple of days. A couple of times a day at least. And that's what we've got so far. So I just wanted to give you a quick peek on how things are looking. It is 2 weeks now, and it's gotten a very dark brown. There's no red or pink color to it yet, but we've still got some time left. I thought I would also test the pH, so this pH paper I dipped in there, and it's a fairly dark green. Let's see if I can show you. Which is 9, which is exactly what I want, so it's at the right pH. So that's perfect. We'll keep checking in and seeing how it changes. Well guys, it is the day. It is time. It has been 4 months. This has been sitting in my bathroom, and I've been shaking it at least every day. The color is not what I was expecting. It gave me a bright orange, almost red flash of color when I used ammonia on it, or bleach on it. And what I've got here is, you can see it's orange, but also kind of brownish. So we will see what we get. I've got 2 skeins of yarn soaking, one that I've mordanted with aluminum sulfate and one that I did not mordant, and I'm going to stick them in the dye pot. All right, I've set up a makeshift strainer here. I don't want to use any of the strainers from my kitchen. So, let's see. Oh my goodness, I can't even open it. So it smells, but it's not awful. And, you know, I'm out here outside, so it's not too bad. So I'm going to let that all strain through for a while. And then I'll put my gloves on to give it a squeeze. It looks pretty brown to me. We will see how it turns out. Okay, so I've squeezed it out. Here's the color that it left on the cloth. Pretty brown. There's a little bit of rosiness to it, but it's mostly brown. And here's all the dye fluid. So I'm going to put probably all of this in the pot, and I'll measure it out. It's about, I think it's about a quart. And then add a bunch of water to it to dilute it. I'm following loosely the recipe in this book, Lichen Dyes, by Karen Diadic Castleman. She says,
I'm going to stop in here because I don't want to give away the recipes that she gives in her book. So I'm just going to let you know that my fluid was a lot less concentrated than hers.
So I want to do 2 skeins of fiber that are both 4 ounces. So I'm just going to pour the whole thing in and then fill up the rest with water. I'll measure it all and we'll just see what happens. All right, so 900 milliliters of dye fluid. Okay, so I have added 9,000 milliliters of water to the 900 milliliters of dye fluid. I ended up with 10 times the amount because that's what will fit in here, and we'll see how it works. I was going to try dyeing in my house because I have a lot more control over the heat than I do on this big turkey roaster. However, there is still the slightest smell of campsite bathroom, and I don't want my house to smell like that, so I'm going to do it outside. Karen also recommends using salt as a way to help keep the color, to make the dye more color fast. And that makes sense because a lot of people will dye with seawater and that will be their mordant. So I have maybe about a cup of salt here, sea salt, that I'm going to go ahead and put in there. And I know one of my yarns is mordanted with aluminum sulfate, but I figure why not? We'll see what happens. All right, in goes the yarn. And now it's covered in pee. So I'm going to turn up the heat and let it gently simmer. I don't want it boiling and bubbling. I don't want to bring the heat up really much past 180. It seems like that's about the temperature where things just all shift to brown. So we'll get started. I just got it up to 180. Not much color in the yarn. So I'm going to let it sit. I've turned the heat way down. I'm going to let it sit for about an hour, and then I'm going to turn it off and let it sit overnight. And we'll see what happens. Well, my friends, as you can see, there is a lovely orange color to the dye bath. However, not much color on the yarn. It's kind of a pale pinky orange. So I've turned the heat off and I'm just going to let it sit overnight, cool off, and see what happens. All right, my friends, here we go. It has been sitting overnight and the water is cool. It's kind of a peachy color, not as vibrant as I was expecting, but I have turned the heat up and we're going to do it again. I'm going to let it simmer no more than 160 degrees Fahrenheit for another hour, and then I will turn it off and let it sit for another 24 hours and let it cool. Then we'll take it out and strain it and basically let it sit for a couple days and cure before I rinse it. So we'll see. It's looking much lighter actually on camera, so I'll try and get a good picture of it for you when it's dried so that you can see the full color. All right, friends. Let's see what happened after the second simmering and overnight. It's a little bit darker. It reminds me a lot of avocado, kind of a salmony pink color. It's pretty. So I'll hang it up and let it dry, and in a couple of days I will rinse it and we'll see what we get. Okay, friends, here it is. These are the 2 skeins that were dyed with the lichen. And this is the original, so you can compare. It's a pretty pale pink. Now, had I used a lot more concentration of the lichen dye, they might have turned out a deeper pink, but not nearly what I was expecting. I don't think we would have ever gotten kind of a vibrant red or fuchsia out of that. But it is a pretty color. However, I could probably achieve this color in about an afternoon with avocado pits instead of 4 months and a urine dye. But it was a fun experiment, and if I find any other lichen that I think might produce color, I might try it again. But yeah, that's what we got. I might over dye it with something. We'll see. I have some annatto seed that they use for food coloring, like with American cheese when they color it yellow. So we'll see. Maybe I'll try that. Anyway, thanks for joining me. If you guys ever decide to play with lichen dyes, I would love to see what you get from them and hear a little about your process. Thanks. Bye.